What's going on, guys? Happy Friday. We have a 9-game NBA slate here on DraftKings. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Hart, and I'll be breaking down this 9-game slate, talking about my favorite spin-up plays, mid-range options, and value plays. And then I'll be going more in-depth and giving my core plays and building blocks in my free Patreon write-up, which is linked down below. And you can also find it on my Twitter at HartDFS. So yeah, make sure to check out all the links. Follow me on Twitter. Hit that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the slate breakdown. Before I get into the breakdown and the lineup review, just want to say follow me on Twitter. Hit that like button as well, as it does really help out my channel. Hopefully we can get to 30 likes on this video. And yeah, follow me on Twitter, HartDFS. I'll answer the questions you guys have. You can find my link tree, which has my YouTube and my free Patreon linked, where I go more in depth on my core plays, my building blocks, which have been great the past few days. It was a solid day yesterday. Had a free ticket into, I think it was the Pacers and Cavaliers showdown slate. As you can see, got a free $25. Can't complain about that. 19th out of 32,000 people. And yeah, the core plays, as I said, have been great the past few days. Siakam had 50 for us. Tatum 48. Williams was terrible, but still got us 15 at a minimum of 3,000, or a flat minimum 3K. And Malachi Flynn, 2 of 12, still got us 24 fantasy points. And then I said if Brunson was going to be ruled out, I was building my lineup around quickly being a core play as well. So that worked out. Core plays have been great the past few days, so let's look to continue it today. And then a quick little lineup review. So this was my kind of my core play lineup right here. It ended up missing the cash by a few fantasy points because of Jalen Williams and Kevin Love, which is super frustrating and annoying. And Malachi Flynn, you can throw him in there. But yeah, Donovan Mitchell, loved the matchup there against Indiana. Malachi Flynn, just loved the fact that Van Fleet was ruled out. He was going to be the main ball handler coming off the bench there. Saw 30 minutes. Everything was there. It was just super frustrating because yesterday, it was Grayson Allen. He got us 22 fantasy points at like 3,800 or 4,000, which you can't complain about. But he was 3 of 14 from three. I mean, if he would have hit a little bit more shots, that he could have got mid 30s, close to 40 fantasy points if he could just hit a shot. Last night it was Malachi Flynn, 2 of 12, still got us 24 fantasy points. So yeah, I mean, it's just annoying because these guys have been pretty low owned as value plays the past few days, and they just haven't been hitting their shots. But Tatum was okay. When you pay up for guys in that 10K range, if they get you like 45 to 50, obviously it doesn't hurt you, but it doesn't really help you unless they're just like extremely low owned. But yeah, I mean, they're decent. Tatum was low owned. He did decent. Pascal, same thing. Even in the blowouts, he was still able to put up a pretty solid performance. Jalen Williams, super frustrating because he played 24 minutes, 15 fantasy points, 10 rebounds, but he couldn't score a point, and he was in massive foul trouble. Like, he could have seen probably close to 30 minutes, if not more. So yeah, he would have been a great value play. It's just he couldn't hit a shot, and he was in huge foul trouble. Quickly, super chalky, but I mean, with that usage, you had to go to him there. Kevin Love, frustrating because he had 15 fantasy points in that first quarter, and then obviously did really nothing the rest of the game. And then Gary Trent was a decent play there. And then the lineup that did cash for me, I took out Tatum and Siakam, and I threw in Luka, kept Kevin Love, quickly Williams, and then went with Wood because I love that matchup against Houston. And Wood, massive foul trouble in that first half. I think he had like 10 fantasy points by halftime, and then really turned it on in the second half. Went up to White and then went up to Gary Trent. Pretty solid day. The core plays have been great the past few days. Have been able to get in cash, I think 3 out of 4 past days. So yeah, let's look to continue the streak into today. So for the slate breakdown, the big news is going to be this Orlando team. They have pretty much their whole team suspended because of that game against Detroit the other day. And so all the values going to be coming from Orlando, all the chalk. So I'm going to eat the chalk. I think you guys should too. And then just get different with like your spend ups and other plays. But for the Washington side, the big news is going to be Beal. If he's in, Porzingis would probably be my favorite play. I'd probably get to him, even because it's a great matchup here against Orlando. Porzingis has had pretty solid upside recently, playing alongside those three. He's kind of like their main piece right now. And so, yeah, even at that price tag, I'd like him. If Beal's out, really like Porzingis here at 8,700. Kuzma would be a great play as well. He'll assume more of the ball handling and the more of just like the overall playmaking as we saw last game. 7 assists, 5 rebounds, 22 points. So they both look solid. You can definitely play both of them. You can even game stack this whole game because if it stays close, I mean, everyone should be doing pretty well here and pretty solid. I do think there'll be a chalky build for today. Is game stacking this game, but you can definitely do that. I'll just throw that out there. But obviously, as I said, the big news is going to be Bradley Beal there. If he's out, you can definitely get to these secondary pieces of Denny, Morris. I will say Gafford has been eating into some of the ceiling of Porzingis when it comes to rebounding because they played in the past 2 games, and he's definitely stealing some rebounds, especially that last game. He got 8 rebounds. Porzingis only got 6. So if Gafford's going to start alongside Porzingis, it does take a little bit of interest away from Porzingis for me, but still I do think I'd play him. Gafford would be a pretty solid play as well. They're at 4,400. So yeah, the big news, the key to the Washington side is that Brad Beal, because if he's out, Porzingis and Kuzma become great plays. Denny and Morris become solid secondary options. If he's in, the only interest for me is going to be Porzingis and Porzingis and maybe Gafford if he starts. Orlando side, as I said, they only have 8 guys for this game tonight, so they're probably going to start, I'm assuming, Paolo, Franz, Fultz, we know that, and Bol. In the 5th one, I'm assuming it's going to be Ross or Schofield. We'll have to wait and see. Either one of them. I prefer Ross coming off the bench as that scorer. His minutes should be secure now. The only problem with him this season is the minutes haven't been there. We know he's a volume shooter. He can get really hot from the floor very fast. So I prefer him coming off the bench and not having to compete with those other starters for usage. So if Schofield's starting at 3,000 or even coming off the bench, I think he looks great there. So I'm going to throw him in there. Who else we got here? Paolo. I do think he could potentially be the lowest owned of this whole side just because of his price tag. People are going to flock to a Bol, who looks fantastic there at 4,800. They could flock to a Fultz, who I do really like there. I just like the opportunity for all these guys. Their price points for their usage and the minutes for this game tonight is just way too low. So love Fultz, the upside he has there. Love Bol, love Schofield. Paolo, more of a secondary play with me along with Franz. I mean, their price points look pretty solid. It could easily smash in their spots. I just prefer getting to these other 3 instead. But we'll have to wait and see how the ownership plays out. Ross, love him off the bench. Caleb Houston, more of a 3-and-D. I think he'll be the lowest owned. He just doesn't really have, it's just not a sexy play there. And then Kevon Harris, I do think he'll play at least 20 minutes. Maybe closer to 25. So he could definitely be a pretty solid value play here at 3,000. He's not going to come out and shoot the ball a ton, but he can do a little bit of everything for you there at 3,000. So Orlando, obviously looking like a great team to play today. Moving on to Phoenix and Toronto. Phoenix, they just can't keep a game close. That's been the frustrating thing with Phoenix recently, is they've been getting blown out. So there is risk, but Toronto is coming off a back-to-back. So maybe this game stays close. Maybe Phoenix actually does well. So Chris Paul could be a solid contrarian spin-up play today. Just because of the blowout risk, I do think people will be off of them. People are going to want to go to that Orlando chalk. So I do think the other normal chalky teams like a Phoenix, who's down a bunch of guys, could be lower owned. So Chris Paul is definitely there, solid option. Same thing with Ayton, and same thing with Mikal Bridges. The big 3, they're going to do a ton. I prefer getting to Ayton and Bridges over Paul, but all 3 of them look solid. Craig, these secondary pieces like Craig, Lee, Okogie, Dwayne Washington, even, you can get to them. My favorite of the secondary pieces would be Washington, just with how aggressive he is off the bench. He has a ton of usage. You just really need the game to you need Paul to be doing terrible, you need to be in foul trouble, or you need the game to be blown out, because if it is, Dwayne should see at least 20 minutes and he's going to be very aggressive out there. Otherwise, most minutes he'll get is probably 12 to 15 if the game's close and Paul's doing well. So he's the riskiest, but he definitely has the highest upside. Toronto, the big news is Van Fleet. If he's in, it's going to be Pascal and Van Fleet for me. These other guys will be secondary pieces in a decent matchup here. If Van Fleet's out, Pascal looks like another great spend up. Scotty would be a very solid play there at 6,700. He'll be the starting point guard. OG would be very solid. All of those 3, Pascal, Scotty, and OG, if Van Fleet's out, all going to see huge minutes. And then Gary Trent would be a very solid play off the bench. Same thing with Boucher. Precious is back. Definitely eats into a little bit of the upside of Boucher. Hernan Gomez got the start, but then he got benched. So I don't think you need to go to him. And then if Van Fleet's out, I do love me some Malachi Flynn. I'm assuming he'll get more ownership, which is frustrating because at low, decently low ownership, 15% last night. He went 2 of 12, 24 fantasy points. So I'm assuming people will chase that chalk. 3,800, he'd be solid. So we just got to wait for that Van Fleet news. Excuse me. Lakers and Atlanta. The Lakers, the big news obviously is LeBron. They do have some other question marks, but it doesn't really change much because if one of these, lower usage guys is out, I still prefer leaning to the Orlando guys rather than rostering one of these guys. But they'd be a decent pivot play, I guess. But the big news obviously is LeBron. If he's in, him and Russ are really my only favorite plays. Thomas Bryant's there. It's just the minutes haven't been great. I'm not really sure why, but yeah, if he's gonna get 30 minutes, I think he looks great at 6,000. It's just, can he get through 30 minutes? That's the risk with playing him. If LeBron's out, obviously Russ becomes almost a must play, a lock. Bryant would be very solid. Schroeder looked great there. Same thing with Lonnie and Reeves. They'd all assume a ton more usage. Obviously, the key plays would be Russ and I'd say a Schroeder, but we have to wait for the news. Moving on to Atlanta. Big news for Atlanta, Trae Young. If he's in, really only for me, it's going to be interest in Trae Young and then maybe a Collins. If he's out, DeJounte becomes pretty much a must play again. He's massive upside, as you can see that last game when he was a core play. 40 minutes, shot the ball 26 times, did not shoot it well. Still got us a 50 bomb with 9 rebounds, 8 assists. I mean, he's just massive usage. He does everything when Trae Young is out. So keep an eye on that news. And then obviously if Young's out, you can get 2 guys like Bogdan and Collins who are going to be a little bit more aggressive, going to have to carry more of the load. And then you could get to maybe a secondary piece like a Hunter or Griffin or Johnson, depending on who starts. But yeah, right now it's just dependent on Trae Young. Detroit and Chicago. For the Detroit side, I'm assuming they're going to start Ivy, Bogdan, Duren, Stewart, and we'll have to wait and see who the starting point guard is going to be. I'm assuming they're going to go with Joseph just because he is like a true point guard, and they're going to want to bring Burks off the bench as that scorer. So I'm assuming Joseph will at the start. You can go to him. He's just a super risky play. Like, he could definitely get you at least 20 fantasy points, but it's super risky because even in spots where they've been, have had no bench and they've had to play Corey Joseph, he's still found a way to be terrible and play like 15 minutes. Even if he's playing like mid-20s, he's still been god-awful. So not a favorite play of mine there at 3,000. I'd rather get to Kevon Harris on the Magic if you're going to play a point guard that cheap. But yeah, Burks should be that scorer off the bench. Saddiq Bey should come off the bench as well. They should see pretty solid minutes here. I prefer getting to Burks at 4,400. He's scoring dependent, but if he's going to see close to 30 minutes, he's going to shoot the ball at least close to 15 times. He's a good shooter, good scorer. Going to have to do more playmaking as well. So I like him. He's going to be my favorite play on the Detroit side. And I think Duren would be my second favorite. He's just seeing a ton of minutes. He's not a high usage guy, but he just collects every rebound. As you can see, 12, 18. He's finally playing, mid-30s minutes, and he's going to get a ton of rebound opportunities. So I do like him a good amount there at 5,400. But we'll kind of have to wait for the starting news and see who they end up actually starting. But yeah, Duren and Burks are going to be my favorite too on Detroit. I'm assuming they'll be the chalkiest on Detroit as well. Moving on to Chicago. DeRozan at that price tag. Just more of a contrarian spin-up play. He is, pretty scoring dependent at times. He's really stepped it up like the past month in terms of his peripheral stats. But at 9,100, it's not my favorite price tag. There is a little bit of blowout risk here. Zach LaVine, kind of priced about right now. Hasn't been great. Vooch, maybe my favorite of the three here. Has a decent matchup against Jalen Duren, who is a little bit foul prone. And the rest of the team, no real need to get to anyone. I mean, Drummond had his best game of the season in 16 minutes. Sure, you can get to him, but he also had 2 steals and 2 blocks, which really helped out his fantasy score. But yeah, not a lot of interest for me in the Bulls side. Minnesota and Milwaukee, tough matchup here for Minnesota. But Anthony Edwards, we know he's going to lead the team in terms of usage, scoring. He's just playing massive amount of minutes. So do like him as a spin up here. If he can just hit his shots, he has massive upside. Could be one of those games where he gets 60, 70 fantasy points if he's hitting his shots. So I do like him a good amount, even in a tough matchup. Russell, decent mid-range play here. Has decent upside. We know he's going to be playing a good amount of minutes. Just comes down to how aggressive he is with shooting the ball. So favorite 2 are going to be Edwards and Russell. Gobert, more of a contrarian play. I'm assuming his ownership will be decently low just because of how bad he's been and how chalky he's been the past 3 games. He's really hasn't done much. And I do think that will finally scare people off him. So I don't mind getting to Gobert here as like a random contrarian play. He's going to be playing a good amount of minutes. Brook Lopez on the other side, so it's not like they're going to go, Milwaukee's going to go small. So yeah, I do like Gobert a good amount at 7,100. And the rest of the team, you can definitely go to them. Like, they have been playing Naz Reid more alongside Gobert, and he's been productive. So at 4,900, you could definitely look to him. He'd be my favorite guy besides kind of those main three. That's really it. On the Milwaukee side, Giannis looks great here, 11-9. Fantastic matchup. Price is finally coming down a little bit on Giannis, so I do think, he looks great once again. Even if Drew Holiday is back, Giannis looks fantastic. If Drew Holiday is back, 8,100, he looks like a solid, spend up in that range. Bobby Portis looks great off the bench. Has that double-double upside. He looks good at that price tag. Same thing with Brooks. So I do have a good amount of interest in these Milwaukee guys. These standouts are going to be Bobby for me and Giannis. And if Drew's back, it'd probably be Bobby, Giannis, and Drew. Brook Lopez is kind of like a fringe secondary play for me. If Drew's out, Allen should assume, once again, they'll probably start Giannis, Lopez, Allen, Connaughton, and Carter. And they'd be decent value plays, but, once again, Giannis is going to assume all the usage. He's going to shoot the ball. He's going to kind of lead everything. Bobby will come off the bench, be aggressive. Brook Lopez will be aggressive. So it's just really dependent on that Drew Holiday news, because it definitely makes these guys more of like almost not must plays, but closer to that range of that upper echelon of like plays that you really need to get to, even with Giannis assuming all the usage. So yeah, once again, another team that we do have to wait for the news on. Thankfully, most of the teams that have like a key news are all going to be in the first like 4 games, and we're most likely going to get all those news before the first game start or lock and start. So that's the saving grace of this slate. For Philadelphia and Pelicans, Embiid and Harden have been fantastic recently. I mean, playing them together has been a good strategy as well. So another solid matchup here for Joel going against J-Val. So I don't mind paying up for him. He's been a fantastic scorer recently. So 11,000, he looks great. Harden's been going insane too the past 3 games. So I don't mind getting to either one of them. They look like great spend ups. Maxey is back, so you can definitely say it does hurt Harden's upside a little bit. So let me backtrack a little bit. I think Embiid would be the only real solid play for me here on this Philly side with Maxey back. Even though Maxey will be on a minutes limit, it definitely eats into Harden's upside. Melton should come off the bench, but at that price tag, don't love it. Harris, always a random tournament option there at his price tag. But yeah, really, it's only going to be Embiid for me on Philly. On the Pelicans side, Zion looks solid here. Not the best matchup for him, but he's been great for the Pelicans recently. Don't love the price tag on CJ. J-Val, just a random tournament option. Don't love him there going against Embiid. Yeah, not a lot of interest in this Pelican side. Murphy looks solid if Herb Jones is going to be out. But yeah, I mean, these guys are all kind of priced up with kind of the main pieces being out past few games. So no real interest for me in the Pelican side right now, unless someone randomly gets rolled out. You can always take a shot on Nance. If J-Val does get in foul trouble, they'll look to Nance or Jackson Hayes or Willie Hernan-Gomez. But yeah, not a lot of interest for me on the Pelican side. Just more like contrarian plays. Miami and Denver. Big news with Jimmy. He should be good to go. If he is, no real interest for me on this team. They're all priced about right. There's more, obviously, once again, just contrarian spin up plays. If you want to get some, sure. They'll be pretty low owned. But that's about it. If with Jimmy back, we know Jimmy, Hero are going to lead the offense. Bam's going to be more of like a secondary guy. Fringe leading the offense alongside them. So at their price tags, no real interest. Denver, Jokic. Obviously, we know we're going to get with Jokic, even in a tough matchup. I could definitely see him having I don't know, because it's Miami. We know they play defense weird at times. Like, they definitely zone Jokic. They could definitely like double, triple team him. So maybe the other guys step up. Don't mind Murray. He's been great the past few games. It's just he's been questionable with that knee. So if he misses again, I'd say a key thing would be building. I know it's a pretty late game, but building your lineup where you have Bones Highland in, because Bones started that last game and he was great. 33 minutes, 45 fantasy points, 20, 11, and 5. We know he's massive upside, and it could be that game where they force Jokic to pass up the ball and they're going to have to rely on these other guys. So I think It was a key with the other slate yesterday or the night before where we had all that Golden State news and all that Denver news, and no one really built their lineups around those guys possibly being out. So that's another thing with like the late games. If you can get super risky, and it can either really really help you out, like the Denver game the other night where Murray, Gordon, Bruce Brown all got ruled out. So obviously Bones Highland started. He was great. Porter was very solid. Obviously, it'd be more usage for Jokic. Zeke was like a solid value play. But obviously, if those guys get ruled in, then you'd be kind of screwed in terms of like your pivot plays. But yeah, I think I'm going to build my lineup around Bones Highland playing and Jamal Murray being ruled out. Even if Aaron Gordon's back and Murray's out, Gordon could be a decent pivot play or a solid option at 6,600. Porter, I prefer him coming off the bench. I know he's been great the past 2 games, but really, if you look at the beginning of the season, Porter was better off the bench than he was playing alongside the starters. He would have like 1 out of every 5-6 games. He would have a solid game. But really, right now for me, it's just going to be me building my lineup around potentially Jamal Murray missing and Bones Highland starting. But if Bruce Brown is back, they'll probably start him and bring Bones off the bench. Then I just pivot to Bruce Brown instead of Bones. Portland and Golden State. Fantastic matchup for Dame against Golden State. I love Dame. This could be a spot where he goes for 50 real life points. So love him there. I don't mind getting to Grant or Nurkic or Simons. They look like decent secondary plays, but that's really it. It's going to be Dame for me. So right now, just going to throw Schofield in the forward spot so we can get. Oops, I gotta get off of Portland real fast. We'll throw Schofield in the forward spot. And then we'll get to Dame at 9,700. And then on the Golden State Warriors side, we have Poole leading the team once again. Hasn't been great as chalk recently, so maybe that keeps his ownership down, kind of like a Chris Paul move. But yeah, I mean, he should see the minutes. He should see the shot attempts. He hasn't been great at the peripheral stats recently either. And that doesn't help with Draymond Green playing, because he's going to be kind of that point forward for them and definitely takes the upside in the rebounds and assists away from a guy like Poole. So with Draymond back, Poole looks like a decent play. Thompson always a tournament option. He's been good recently the past like month and a half. DiVincenzo, you can get to him. Solid upside. But no real like standout plays for me, with pretty much the whole team being in besides obviously Steph and Wiggins. The best plays would obviously be Poole and Thompson, and then I'd say probably Draymond. And then moving on to the last game, we got Utah versus Sacramento. This game could be a very solid game to get pieces from, because it should be very high scoring. 2 teams you really want to attack in Utah and Sacramento. So Laurie, Clarkson going to be leading Utah side. They both look solid. Laurie's coming off a very solid game. 2 great games back to back. Clarkson, decent option there. Prefer getting to Laurie, but yeah, they're both pretty solid. The rest of the team, just kind of there. No real standouts to me. I mean, you can get to Conley if you want. Don't love it. It's really just going to be the top 2 guys for me. And then on Sacramento, Sabonis at 10-3 looks fantastic here. You really want to target bigs against Utah. They've destroyed them, and Sabonis has been fantastic recently. He's been pretty low owned a few of these games as well. People really haven't been going to him. So yeah, I love Sabonis as a spend up against Utah. Fox looks pretty solid as well. Prefer getting to Sabonis for the price tag. Herter, Barnes, Murray, all okay secondary plays. I prefer getting to Monk. We saw him have a huge game that last game against Denver. He can have that upside, so that's why he's always a decent tournament option. But that's really it. It's going to be Sabonis for me on the Sacramento side. So I think right now I'm going to take out Porzingis and just throw in Sabonis there. Then we're left with, let's get out of Sacramento. We'll go to small forward, and then we're left with 6,800 left over for this potential lineup for tonight. Obviously, there's a ton of news we have to wait on, so it could definitely change a lot of these spend up plays. So make sure to follow me on Twitter and my free Patreon link down below, and I'll release my core plays once we're closer to lock. But yeah, it allows you to get to a guy like Scotty Barnes, OG, Mikal, a lot of good options here in the small forward range. It just depends where you want to go. For right now, let's just go with just Scotty Barnes. Obviously, if Van Fleet gets ruled out, looks like a very, very solid lineup. So I'd say, yeah, if you guys like the video, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.